Hello everyone and welcome to the section 7.2, 7.3 review. Starting right away with number 1, which says find the zeros or roots of each function. We have a through f. So just one quick note. In order to find the zeros or the roots, we either need to graph the function and look for the x-intercepts, or get it in factored form and use the zero product property. So I'm going to do it algebraically. So I'm just going to get into factored form and use zero product property. So if you need to look at notes or study this more, this is from number 1 is from 7.2. Okay, so starting out with a, we have 0 equals x plus 1 and x minus 2. Now this is already in factored form, so using the zero product property tells me that the two things being, or three things, or four things, whatever it might be, being multiplied, one or the other has to be 0. So in this case I have two things being multiplied, so either this one here, x plus 1, has to equal 0, or this here, x minus 2, has to equal 0. So I just solve each one for x. Subtract 1, x equals 1, or when I add 2, x equals 2. And there are the zeros or the roots of 1a. Okay, let's look at 1b. We have 0 equals 0.5 times x minus 2 times x plus 3. So here we have three things being multiplied, 1, 2, 3. So either 0.5 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. I can't magically turn 0.5 into 0, so this guy's out. I can solve this, and x would equal 2, and I can solve this, so x could equal negative 3. So one or the other. And there is 1b. Okay. 1c. Negative 2x times x minus 2 times x minus 5 equals 0. So here we go again. Three terms, 1, 2, 3. So negative 2x equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0, or x minus 5 equals 0. I divide here by negative 2. Let's find out that x could equal 0. Here I add 2, so x could equal 2, and here I add 5, so x could equal 5. So this one has actually three answers. X could be any one of those three solutions, 0, 2, or 5. Okay. So D, E, and F, I'm sure you've noticed by now, are not already in factored form, so we have to get them that way. So looking at D, we have a trinomial, x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. We have a trinomial and it's quadratic. So to factor this, I could use Xbox method. Since the coefficient of x is a 1, I just need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add to a positive 1. So let's say you did draw the x. You'd have 1 times negative 6, it's negative 6, and a 1. So two numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add to 1. Well, we have 3 times negative 2. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, and if I add those together, I get a positive 1. So 3x and 2x. And because that coefficient of x squared is a 1, I know that my parentheses are going to come right out and say x plus 3. Whoa, whoa, what is that? Okay. I have no idea where all of that came from. It looks like all the problems on top of each other. Interesting. Well, that's something new that I didn't know I could do. Let's try that again. Okay, so back to D, right where I left off, x squared plus x minus 6. So you already saw the box. Go back if you need to. But this factors into x plus 3 and x minus 2. So 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, and 3 plus negative 2 is the positive 1 that I was looking for. Now that I'm in factored form, again, I have two terms being multiplied, so either x plus 3 equals 0 or x minus 2 equals 0. When I solve, minus 3, so x could equal negative 3, or when I add 2 here, x would equal positive 2. Okay, factoring first. E E is x squared plus 7x equals 0. So here we still have quadratic, so I can still factor, but it's not a trinomial and it's not the difference of perfect squares. I do notice though that both of these terms have an x in common. So I'm going to take out, they don't have a greatest common factor. There is none there, so I don't have to worry about that. But they do have a greatest common variable, and that's x. So I'm going to divide out an x. So factored form of this would be x times x squared divided by x to the first is x. And these two x's would cancel, so x plus 7 equals 0. So in doing that, I have two terms, one here and one here. So either x equals 0 or x plus 7 equals 0. So my two solutions, x equals 0 or subtract 7, x equals negative 7. Okay, and that's using that greatest common factor, greatest common variable. F is done the same way, but this time we do have a greatest common factor to divide out as well. So F 4x squared minus 10x equals 0. And again, what tips me off that I'm going to do a greatest common factor, greatest common variable, is that I don't have a third term, a trinomial, like I did in D, to factor into those two groups of parentheses. I only have two terms. So that kind of tips me off that I need to look to do something a little bit different. So looking for greatest common factor, I have a 2. Greatest common variable, just an x. So divide out the 2x, rewrite it in factored form, 2x times 4 divided by 2 is 2, x squared divided by x to the first is just an x, minus 10 divided by 2 is 5, and these x's cancel, so I have this solution. Using the two terms, 1, 2 that are being multiplied, I have 2x equals 0, or 2x minus 5 equals 0. So those of you that aren't writing out what each one equals 0 and then solving each time, you're just taking the opposites from the parentheses, you have to be careful when you get to a problem like this. I still divide this by 2, so x equals 0, or here I add 5 to both sides, but I'm not done because I have 2x equals 5 now. So in order to solve for x, I have to divide both sides by 2, and I see that x equals 2.5. So my two solutions, 0 or 2.5. Okay. Moving on to number 2. So number 2 is convert each quadratic function to vertex form by completing the square, then identify the vertex. So this is 7.3, so complete the squares, 7.3, the problems that we were just working on. So if you need to go back and look at notes, that's where you'll find them. So A is y equals x squared plus 20x plus 94. So starting out, isolate the x squared and the x term. I rewrite and write in my blanks, as you know, x squared plus 20x plus blank minus blank plus 94. and then I draw my square to find those blanks. So here's x squared. Here and here is 20x divided by 2. So this is 20 divided by 2, which means it's 10. So it's 10 and 10. So outside is x and 10, which means my lovely missing piece here must be 100. So I put 100 here and here. This expanded form factors down into x plus 10 times x plus 10. So it factors from here. I just write it as x plus 10 squared, and then simplify the outside. Negative 100 plus 94 is negative 6. So here is vertex form. That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question said identify the actual vertex. So remember, the vertex comes from h and k, but we have to take the opposite of what's in our parentheses. So the vertex is negative 10, k is exactly as it is, negative 6. And there's the second part of my answer. All right, on to B. I just feel weird like not talking while I'm sitting here erasing all this stuff. So I'm just going to do a little jingle every time. I'll keep you interested. We'll see. All right. B. Y equals x squared minus 7x plus 16. Okay, so again, isolating my first two, x squared and negative 7x, and rewriting x squared minus 7x plus something minus something plus 16, drawing my square. X squared in here is half of negative 7, so in there is negative 7 divided by 2, which is negative 3.5 and negative 3.5. These guys get x's, so here's x, negative 3.5, x, and negative 3.5. So to complete my square, I need 12.25. So in the blanks, 12.25 and 12.25. From here, factor, which just comes from the outside of the square that I drew. So my new equation, y equals x minus 3.5 squared, and then simplify negative 12.25 plus 16, which gets you plus 3.75. So here is the equation, and vertex, again, h and k, opposite of h, so positive 3.5, and exactly what k is, so positive 3.75. So 1 and 2, two solutions. Well, one of each, vertex form and finding the vertex. Okay, so on to C. La 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 la. Okay. C. Y equals 6x squared minus 24x plus 147. Okay, so this one has one extra step, because when I isolate these first two variables, the x squared and the x, I notice that the x squared has a number in front of it, which I can't have, so I have to factor that out. So I'm going to start by dividing both of these terms by 6 so that it goes away. So y equals 6 times, this cancels, leaving me with x squared, which is exactly what I need, and negative 24 divided by 6 is negative 4x. Remember, in here I'm going to have to add something to complete my square. I'm going to have to subtract that same thing, but when I subtract whatever that number is that goes in here, I have to multiply it by 6. And then I'll add the 147. So, drawing the square, I still use these two terms to draw my square. So x squared, and then in here is half of negative 4, so that's negative 2x and negative 2x. So here's x and -2, x and -2. The magic number to complete my square is a 4. So 4 here and 4 here. So now to simplify, we have y equals, factored form from here is from the outside of my square, x minus 2 squared. Then I'm going to simplify this. I'm just going to do it in 2 steps. So -4 times 6 is -24, and then I have to add 147 to that. So y equals x minus 2 squared, and -24 plus 147 is a positive 123. So here is the vertex form of that equation. I'm just going to erase this little square over here for a minute so that I can write the vertex somewhere legible. So then the vertex, okay, opposite of -2, so positive 2, and exactly what I see, so positive 123. And there's the other part of the answer, vertex form as an equation, and then identifying the vertex. Okay, on to D. Oh, I forgot to sing. Sorry. I guess you probably saved your ears a little bit. D. Y equals 5x squared plus 8x. Okay, so if you don't like the fact that this doesn't have a third number, it's not a trinomial, it's just a binomial, you can put a +0 if it makes you feel better, but it doesn't really matter because we just use those first 2 terms anyway, the 5x squared and the 8x. So again, I notice there's a number in front of my x squared which I cannot have, so I have to divide that out. Divide by 5 and divide by 5. Now many of you are going, but 8 isn't divisible by 5. Well, it is, but it gives you a decimal. It doesn't matter, we have to do it because that 5 cannot be in front of the x squared. So y equals 5 times x squared, and then when we do 8, because this cancels, we do 8 divided by 5, we get positive 1.6x. Oh, I forgot to leave my space. Hold on. I don't want to paste anything. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so then we would add something to this and subtract something from it. And remember, when we subtract from it, we also have to have that 5 in the end because this will be multiplied by the 5 out front. There's nothing to add on the end because it was just +0, so I can just leave that out. Okay, let's draw the square. X squared, and half of 1.6 divided by 2, which is 0.8x, and 0.8x. So the outside of this box is x and 0.8, x and 0.8, and when I multiply 0.8 times 0.8, I get 0.64. So that's what completes the square and goes in the blanks. Simplify, or not simplify, rather factor what's inside the parentheses. So y equals 5 times, here's the factored form, x plus 0.8 squared, and then negative 0.64 times 5 is negative 3.2. So here is vertex form of that equation, and then the vertex itself, got it already? Negative 0.8 and negative 3.2. Alrighty, so that takes care of 1 and 2. On to number 3. So vertex form and factored form from a graph. So let me put a picture in first. Wow, that's awfully large. I don't even know where I'm going to have room to write. Okay, let me move this up and over a little bit since I don't need the whole. Okay, so here is 3A. Let me use, what's a good color on here? Blue, maybe? Purple? Does that show up? Yeah, that shows up. Okay. Okay, 3A. So we need vertex form and factored form. So vertex form, remember we're writing with a single scale factor. So whereas my equation used to, well, vertex form, because otherwise, whereas my equation used to look like this, y equals b times x minus h over a squared plus k. In 7.2, we learned that this out front needs to be a single scale factor and not have two of them in our equation. So what we had to do, if you recall, was take this, square it, and then bring it outside and divide it under b. So now when I write this equation, instead of writing it the way we did in chapter 3 or chapter 4, I'm rewriting it as b divided by a squared times x minus h squared plus k. That way I don't forget that I'm writing it as a single scale factor. Okay? So, remember also that a is the horizontal scale factor and b is your vertical scale factor. And we already know h and k is your vertex because we were just practicing that in the last problem. So, let's start out with finding out h and k. That's the easiest one. We locate the vertex. So there is the vertex. It is 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, negative 4. So h is 3, k is negative 4. So y equals, I'm going to leave a space for b and a, x minus 3, I don't know why I wrote it so far up in the parentheses, squared, and then k is negative 4, so I can either put plus negative 4 or just a minus 4 on the end is fine. Now for b and a. So remember, we find another point on the graph. So if this is another point on the graph, I go from the vertex and I go up and over to that point, and then I count how far up and over I went. I went up 4 and over 2. So the horizontal direction, left and right, is A, and the vertical direction is B, which means that B is 4, A is 2, and that bottom number A being 2 is squared. So we are left with y equals 4 over 2 squared is 4 over 4 times x minus 3 squared minus 4. And 4 over 4, I'm just going to erase this because 4 over 4 just reduces to a 1. So there is the vertex form of the equation from that graph. Okay? I'm going to leave the graph up. I'm going to erase all this stuff. So you can go back or pause it now if you need to, go back and rewatch. But I need to do factored form, and there's too much going on in this graph for me to now do factored form. Okay. So, factored form, there we go, FF, factored form, is y equals your a, so I could take the a from vertex form, which was just a 1, times x minus your first root times x minus your second root. Well, where do we find our roots? Those are our x-intercepts. So our root 1 is 1, and the second root is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's root 1, here's root 2. So in my parentheses, first of all, like I said, a in the last problem, the number outside the parentheses was just a 1, so it'll stay that. And then this will be x minus root 1 is 1, and x minus root 2, which is 5. And that's the equation. I'm not sure if you can really read that. Let me see if I can get it in something more legible. I don't know if that's any better, but y equals 1 times x minus 1, x minus 5. And there you go. You have your two versions of the equation in that graph. Okay, so only 2 more problems. You can try them on your own first for B and C if you want to before I do them here. If you want to pause. Okay, so here is B. So we have 3. That's not what I did. We have 3B. Okay, so hopefully I can get all these to fit on one page. So vertex form, I have y equals b over a squared times x minus h squared plus k. So finding the vertex first, no, vertex is here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So negative 6 and negative 1. So y equals x minus negative 6. So that changes to plus, right? And plus negative 1, because that's my k. Figuring out a and b. So getting to another point on my graph, I go up 1 and over 1. So b is 1, a is 1, but that's squared. So I have 1 over 1 squared. This is a fun time to use yellow because it shows up actually. Y equals 1 over 1 squared. Well, 1 squared is just a 1, so it's 1 over 1, which again is 1. And then I'll simplify. X minus the negative 6, that's going to change to plus, so this will be x plus 6. And then plus negative 1, that changes to minus, so a 1. Ooh, look what I forgot. And that would get you some points off. I forgot my squared. Okay, got to make sure that squared's there, so learn from my mistakes before so you don't make them on a quiz. So here is vertex form. Factored form, I wish I could find another fun color like yellow that shows up so brightly. Maybe, let's see about this one. So now factored form, remember, factored form, not so bad. Factored form, y equals a times x minus the first root times x minus the second root. So a is going to come from my vertex form, so a is 1 again. So I'm going to put the answer over here so it doesn't interfere with anything on the bottom. Y equals 1 times, and find your roots. X-intercepts. So here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So negative 5, 0. And 6, 7, negative 7, 0. So here's root 1, here's root 2. So we get x minus negative 7 and x minus negative 5. And we know that we can rewrite these so that it's a plus. And there would be your factored form. X plus 7 and x plus 5. This is why we say we just take the opposite of what we have in the parentheses when we write the equation, because that double negative will change it to a positive anyway. Okay, and last. Let's see if I can get it done in 2 minutes and keep it under 30. Okay, so I'm going to speedy through this one. You can just check your work. Okay, I'm going to do it all in yellow because I like this bright color. All right, so vertex. Oh, that's not a good start. Stop. Okay, you're good. Okay, so vertex form, y equals b over a squared times x minus h squared plus k. Vertex is down here, so it's at a positive 1. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, negative 9. So that's h and k, so y equals x minus 1 squared minus 9. B, I have to go up and over to another point on my graph, so I guess I'm going to climb up to here. So up 9 over 3. Here's A, here's B. So I have 9 over 3 squared. 3 squared is 9, so it's 9 over 9, and again, oh, I just get a 1. So x minus 1 squared minus 9. Here is vertex form. Okay, let me erase what I got going on here. Factored form. Y equals a times x minus root 1 times x minus root 2. A is going to be a 1 because it was in this problem. So root 1, root 2. So this is negative 2, 0. So there's root 1. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. So, oops. So this is 4, 0. So there's root 2. So we have x minus negative 2, and x minus 4. Minus the negative turns to a plus. So y equals 1 times x plus 2 times x minus 4. And there is the vertex form, or sorry, the factored form of that graph. Oh, 15 seconds over. All right, well, go back and look at it as much as you need. Review 7.2, 7.3, the previous screencasts, review your notes, review the classwork, and study for your quiz coming up. See you soon.